Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, really excited to have you join us today. My good friend, Jake Breen, is back by popular demand. A lot of you leaned into our last conversation. And I'm not gonna lie, one of my favorite people to talk to is Jake. We just kind of have this rolling conversation going on. And anytime I got something that's rolling in my mind, I'm either shooting Jake a text or he's doing the same to me. So Jake, thanks for being back with us today.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me. I feel the same way.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's jump right into our topic today. So a couple of days ago, I took a picture of a page of the book I was reading and sent it over to Jake and wanted to get some of his thoughts on it. And we thought, what better platform to get his thoughts on and kind of go back and forth on it than the Whole Enchilada. And it has to do with motivation and building a team and vision. So if it's all right, Jake, I'm just going to start by, I'm going to share this quote out of the book. It's the book, The Motivation Manifesto, which is an incredible book if any of you haven't read it. But here's what it says, and then we're going to jump in and kind of debate around it. It says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people together to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. I'll read it again real quick, just so that our listeners are probably driving or listening. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people together to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. When I sent that over to you, Jake, what were some of your thoughts on that as you first read it?
I think the underlying tone of that is telling you as a leader, if you're the one building the ship and assembling the team, you really have to start with the foundation of what's the vision and what's your core purpose. And I'm going to give this high level so I don't go off on a tangent right at the beginning.
Yep.
But the first thing that came to my mind when I read that is a good close friend of mine who's had a lot of success, and I don't just mean financial success, and a lot of other aspects. He's very successful in his life. I would say in his business, his management style has never really jived with my management style. Not that either way is right, wrong, or indifferent, but he's followed the path of a lot of, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say slave driving. If you're very organized and you're diligent and you're militant and you as the leader are doing all that, then your minions will follow suit. Although being example can be a form of motivator for those under you, it's perhaps not the highest level of motivation. And I think this quote is addressing the highest level of motivation. We can instill in our people a purpose and a vision, the other things are going to fall in place.
No, I think that's right. And I think it's really interesting that this was an aha for me in my career. I had to learn that what motivated me and the way I received how I got motivated or got excited isn't necessarily how everybody gets excited and wants to receive information and what that looks like. One of the things was like, wait a second, everybody isn't wired like me. My job as a leader isn't to force everyone to be like me, but show up and get them inspired the way they want to be inspired.
Yep. Very true. And leaders or visionaries or people that are just put in a position to lead people, it's a lifelong process, right? Like there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of books written on the topic of leadership. And one of the first things key leaders who are inserted fall brazen to, or mistakes that they make, is what you just addressed, assuming that, all right, here's my style and I'm going to work hard and everybody's going to follow suit. We're in real estate. And so I guess one of the most proliferant ancillary businesses I see this in is construction. Yep. Everybody knows right now it's a nightmare to get labor all across the United States, super exacerbated in our market. And so you're trying to frame a house and the manager of their crew is like, I don't get it. I start at 6 a.m. I'm texting my guys. The night before when we finish the job, they promised they'd be there. And I'm doing everything the boss told me to do. and only half the crew's showing up.
Yep.
What do we do?
Yeah, it's interesting right now. That really falls into like this quote where it says, "Don't drum people up just to collect wood and don't assign them." In that scenario with the construction, it's like, yeah, they can if they show up, more than likely they're going to give an honest, hard day's work that day. But it's tasks for them. Yep. It's not about them saying, "Well, I'm committed to the end of this project because I'm excited about seeing the end product."
Yeah,
because they could spend. I gave you X amount of effort today, which you promised to pay me Y for that. Well, tomorrow I'm ready to give X amount of effort again. But if someone gives me Y plus 1, that's more important to me than the ending result of the project.
Yep. Yep. And I've always been really impressed by leaders, and I would like to get there. I wouldn't say that myself as a leader has gotten there, but there are leaders that have the ability to motivate across all personality and or job levels of people in their firm. One of my first jobs was cleaning rooms up at one of the local ski resorts at Snowbird, Utah, at 14 years old. And my local neighborhood folk and people I looked up to were impressed that I'd ride my bike and then take the bus up there and do that at 14 on Saturdays. But I remember one manager I had in particular, it was a gal, and she was actually in my neighborhood, so I kind of knew her. And she had a style that wasn't so directive. It wasn't just, okay, today you're cleaning rooms 1 through 7, Jake, and here's your job and how fast can you get it done. And she was cool and would check in, but more than that, kind of instilled this excitement around the job. And I'm not so sure we bought into some major vision of wanting to improve Snowbird Ski Resort.
Yeah.
But she made us feel like we were a part of everything going on there. And I did it just so I could get a free season's pass when I was a ski junkie. And so I felt a part of it, right? So the question becomes, how can we instill that in people around us? And then the beauty is, if you can, your job as a leader or manager becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, if I like to dissect things. If I dissect this quote, there's really like 3 players or 3 pieces to the puzzle. One is the vision, right? It's in this here. It's described as either the ship, so the vehicle of what we're going to take, or the immensity of the sea, the destination, right? So it is the vision, it's the leader, and then it's the team players. Mm-hmm. So here's the question that I'm interested to hear your answer. If out of those 3, is there one that's most important or more important than the other 2, or are they all equally important?
Yeah, that's a good question. Shooting from the hip, a lot of books would tell you that you got to have that visionary and that key leader, and that's where you see amazing things come about. So I'm not going to discredit that. But the way I work with my team, I would say it's everybody. And here's how I put that in perspective. In real estate, I have seen producers, this falls into our last podcast, but I've seen top producers, and I can think of one that has lasted a 40+ year career as kind of a top producer and doing it sort of solo. Yes, he's had assistants and things throughout the years, but he sifts through them like water, and is the personality type that gets a high off the sale, but that's kind of the only thing he lives for. And fast forward to his late 60s, his entire life, all hobbies, everything is consumed by selling real estate. Yeah. That's okay. I'm not knocking that if that's your style. I think most of the rest of us, a large percentage of us, would like to enjoy what we do while doing it. And a key factor of that is who we surround ourselves with. I personally find it really hard to go about the business solo. It can be depressive, but the wins aren't celebrated as much, and the lows are really tough when it's all on you. 100%. And so I think the team becomes vital. And then there's all the beauty of the things. If the team's really humming and you have synergy, you can have just as much or more success and leverage yourself. and also be having fun while doing so.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a big piece of measurement of it is everyone having fun in the process, right? As I kind of thought through that question too, and I don't have a direct answer because I'm thinking, okay, well, if you have a really incredible leader and mediocre team players that are there for the paycheck, right? Well, at some point, those people are going to rotate and the leaders might burn out. Or on the other side of that, if you have a mediocre leader, but incredibly talented team members that are excited and bought in, they're going to get frustrated with the leader at some point. Or the third scenario is you have an incredible leader, incredible team players, but they don't know where they're going. They might be working hard and having fun doing it, but at some point they're going to get up and be like, where are we going? Like, we've been working hard the last week and we're in the same spot we were before.
Yep.
So I don't know how to answer that question of does the chicken come before the egg or the egg come before the chicken, right?
Yeah, it's very true. But you nailed a key factor. And, when I was early on in my real estate career, I would say probably 3 years in, I was in my early 20s. I had a business partner I teamed up with. So it was just him and I, no assistant. And we were both still in college. And so we kind of rotated college schedules. And we kind of had a little thing humming. We still had, I don't even know if we had our first listing control sale, but we'd had quite a few buyer control sales. And really it was trying to convince our friends' parents to allow us to represent them as buyers. And I remember explaining this to my father-in-law because he saw in the newspaper that we had received some sort of production award. And he said, I'd be really careful, Jake. Partnerships, sharing something that intimate in business, it really can just lead to lawsuits and problems and fights. It's kind of like divorces. And here I am married to his only daughter. And he's like, the divorce rate in the United States is 50+%. And it rocked me a little, Marcus. Like it shook me a little, and I second guessed the path I was on. Fast forward almost 20 years, I'm still happily married and not divorced, and my father-in-law is now my backyard neighbor. But at the same time, I can honestly say for me, probably one of the top joys of my career is doing it with my team, the culture we've created in the group, and showing up to the office. And the lunch we went to today on a Friday, I mean, it's do I love everybody all the time? No, you're never gonna. But we celebrate wins together and we share in losses together, and we have a similar motivation. Don't confuse that with motivation levels. There's people on my team that are a low level of motivation and want to just do part-time, and there's super high motivated. But I mean, getting in the ship together, or to this quote, I think that everyone has a decent idea or a yearning to want to go to sea. And so they want to see the ship get built.
Yeah, no, I love that you say that, and you bring up, the percentage of divorce rate. If you look at that from a relationship standpoint, I would say that the majority of relationships fail at some point, right? Whether it's a business partnership, employee-employer relationship, at some point those fall apart. And as I'm thinking through this in my own personal life, of times when I was the wood collector, I was collecting wood for someone else's ship, as opposed to asking people to help me collect wood for, I want to say my ship, but I really should say our ship in that scenario. It's what was it that kept me engaged to say, okay, I want to be the best version of me in that moment, whether I'm the leader, whether I'm the follower. It's, do I believe in the destination, right? Because even if I am the leader and I'm the one having other people build the ship, if I'm not excited about the destination, I'm probably not going to show up as a very good leader. On the other side of that, even if I have a great leader, but I'm the doer, I'm the collector, I play another role in the team. Again, if I'm not excited about the destination, I'm not gonna pull my weight and do my role.
Yep. And let's face it, if you were to poll Americans, and I think there's some data and statistics on this, and ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you in your job? Those are rated pretty low. And we've got categories for what industries have the most happiness and the least happiness and all that jazz, right? I'm not disputing those. Those are probably relatively accurate polls. But what the polls aren't discovering is deeper down at a deeper level. What they're trying to address is, do you feel purpose in what you do? And there's times in my life that I've enjoyed and felt purpose in just yard work. No matter what level I'm at income-wise. And then there's times that it's just a nagging nuisance. And overlay on top of that, not just the tasks you do in your life or your job, but if you are also in a position where you're trying to bring people along, or you have staff or employees or a team, even if you're just a leader within a business, but you have a team around you, and going, all right, if I'm not excited about the destination, or I don't have a purpose for it, and it's just checking the boxes, which we all slump into, guys, I do it.
Yeah.
What are they feeling? What are the people that are looking to you for those tasks and organization and ultimately the destination? How are they feeling? So, man, how do you build that culture, and how the heck do you stay excited, motivated, top of your game all the time?
Yeah, it was interesting as I reflected on this quote the first time I read it. It made me think of all the people in my world that work within my organizations, my several different companies, but even more importantly, my direct reports, the people that have really put their other opportunities aside to pursue a win and an opportunity with me moving forward. Yeah. When they said yes to coming into my world, they said no, these were people that had other opportunities lined up, right? Yeah. And they said no to those to come lean into me. And one of the ahas for me is, in the process of me building a relationship with them and getting them on board, we went through this big, long process of, help me understand what's important to you. Where do you want to go? Do you see this being a path to getting you there? How does that make you feel? What does that do for your family? All of those things. But then where I failed as a leader, or at least my mental perception in that moment was, okay, well, I did all the right things getting them on board and excited about it. But if I reconnected on that, because I think you and I could both agree, in fact, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording this, is we're in a completely different world today than we were 12 months ago or 18 months ago. And have I connected on a deep enough level back to say, has that changed for you?
That's really hard to do. You read books. I'm thinking of Jack Welch's book that he finished when he retired as the CEO of GE. And I'm thinking of a few other examples. Here locally in Salt Lake, one of the biggest real estate developers, I won't say his name, but he's the guy that owns Real Salt Lake. He's got a reputation early in my career. For one reason or another, I got to have a sit down with him and interview him in my MBA program. And he had a similar theme to Jack Welch's book. And the theme I'm getting at is, as you grow in your career, and let's not just talk making more money, but just as you grow and there's more people under your umbrella and more people in your culture, it becomes harder and harder to stay personally in touch or have a personal connection with those people. So I get what you're saying, and I've seen too. There's a lot of effort that goes into courting somebody or recruiting, or let's take this back to marriages, dating, right? Yeah. And then I'll butcher the quote, but what is it? This is like you romance and date, and then people get married and all that goes away, and now you're having a scheduled date night, right? Yeah. So that's tough to do in a business. I think that brings up all the topics of leverage and culture and your org chart and who's in what key positions, so that people can still feel your influence or see that vision or have an excitement to get on the ship.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's interesting is this has caused me not only to reflect on my own leadership and my own team, but also look back over the last 20 years of my own career and personal relationships of like what were the relationships or opportunities that really propelled me forward, that I was proud to be on those ships, And how often did I get myself on someone's ship that kind of went in circles for a minute? And then I was like, whoa, wait a second. This was an attractive ship. It was cool looking, but now that I'm on it, I don't know where we're going, right?
For sure.
And then you reflect that over to say, okay, well, with my own leadership, is everybody on here that's rowing, beyond building the ship, is we're on and rowing the ship, do they all know where we're going, or are they just like doing their task and rowing, and at some point they're going to burn out and be like, I'm getting off this thing?
Oh yeah. Well, I probably can't use names here because this is fresh, and I'm assuming some of our listeners are in the KW world, and some of these people are in the KW world. But I was on a Zoom just last week with some entrepreneurs who also have some ties to KW, and they recently recruited a big position person from the Berkshire Hathaway world, not a producer, somebody on the executive side, to really leave a high-powered Berkshire Hathaway position to jump back to a startup. This person has a history of a few successful startups, but had took the career path, the retirement account, the big name position. And when these, let's say, recruiters were telling me this story last week, they mentioned some of the carrots they dangled to recruit this person. But the thing that stuck with me is he said, well, I told this Berkshire Hathaway guy as I was boarding a flight, it seems to me that you've got one more home run left in you. And by the time he landed on that flight, he had a text from the guy saying, let's chat. And I think it was that pivotal moment that turned the tables. At least that's how it was expressed to me. And so when you're trying to not just get people to collect wood and you're trying to give them the entire vision, I don't think there's a way to really fake it. In other words, what I mean is, I think as you and I have explored with each other the last year, you really got to get to know people. I mean, another similar story, I'll be a lot briefer on this one, but back to Deloy Hansen, the owner of Real Salt Lake, big deal here in our market, billion-dollar developer. When I was sitting down with him in my MBA program, he talked about recruiting away the CEO of Zions Bank and how he did it. And it was pretty analogous to that Berkshire Hathaway story I just went through. And the underlying factor was, yes, these people are good at what they do and they can talk the talk and all that, but there's not really a way to fake it when you get to a higher level of bringing or attracting higher level talent to you. They're also people of higher level talent. They're not going to be duped. And so you got to get to know them. You got to put into the effort. You got to understand what makes them tick. And then how do you align what makes them tick with your vision?
I love this point. For you to win, you have to have A+ talent across the board, an A+ leader, A+ team players, right? Perfect team players that are excited about it. The lower level talent, or people that are just in it for the paycheck, it's easier to use your word to dupe them, to be like, oh, look at the shiny object. Let's at least run this way for a while. And they'll be like, oh, all right, I get my paycheck. Let's do this. It's fun for a while. The higher level talent you want to surrender yourself with, the more opportunities they have to say no to say yes to you. And it's got to be clear for them to be like, okay, I believe in the vision. I believe in you as a leader. Let me look at the other team players. Okay, all those things are in alignment. And I think that you're not going to attract talent if you don't have clarity and can articulate your vision well. You're not honing in and growing as a leader, and you're not going to say, hey, not only do you get to work with me and go here, but look at the talent level that we get to work with, so we have fun along the way. We're going to win together.
Yep. And there's, I think would be amiss if we didn't mention there's recent leaders in business history. Let's take Steve Jobs, for example. In Walter Isaacson's autobiography on Jobs, the famous one that the movie was made about, there's a lot of stories about him kind of being a jerk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone laughs about, oh man, Steve Jobs was like this, or it was his way or the highway, or, he'd have 6 engineers bring in ideas and he'd just say they were all crap and throw them in the garbage. So what I'm not saying that I think we've maybe alluded to this whole time is, oh, it's got to be company and culture and fun and all these things, else it doesn't work. There are many styles, but even if he was a jerk at many times, there's also instances of him being the number one motivator in key people right under him at certain points of their life. Or they all really bought into the vision. These were people that were like, all right, Jobs got pissed again, but we're really buying into Apple's vision. And it was a great vision. It provided phenomenal returns for them. There's many more phenomenal careers that haven't been written about far under Steve Jobs.
Yeah. No, I love that. You brought up Jack Welch a few minutes ago, which is an interesting personality to learn about. But one of the things one of the biggest things I've taken away from his history as one of the greatest CEOs in the U.S. economy is he talks about how do you know you've talked about your vision enough, right? It's not just enough to cast the vision. And I fall and prey to this sometimes where, like, here I am in my home office. I could come up in here and think of a brilliant idea and be like, okay, this is where we're going. But if I don't go out and articulate it clearly and frequently enough, people aren't going to get as excited about where we're going as I am. And he made the comment, I think between you and I, we're going to butcher a lot of quotes, but we're going to give the general idea behind it. Is basically, he says, the way you've talked about your vision is enough. You got to talk about it till you're blue in the face. And when you think you've talked about it enough, you got to talk about it some more.
Yep.
All the way to the point where you walk by a water cooler somewhere and the two people at the water cooler that you're not even part of their conversation are sharing how excited they are about the vision and the progress of the company.
Yeah.
That's when you know you've talked about your vision enough.
Yeah. And Marcus, I think it's okay if we butcher quotes because it shows everybody we're unscripted. This isn't planned.
Yeah.
This is real talk, which when I'm listening to podcasts, I prefer. So hopefully that's our listeners' preferred style.
Yeah.
But that just really jogged my memory. This is kind of an aha for me. Over the last 20 years, I've dabbled in two contrasting arenas. I've been an adjunct professor and been on the board of Westminster College, just kind of give back. That's where I got my MBA. I'm not affiliated anymore, but I did that for about a 6-year stint. And so I was around MBA students all the time. And I would tell you the number one question or theme I was asked about was, how to come up with a good idea. I got this business idea. I'm going to launch this business. And everyone was just, their way of entrepreneuring was the idea. Mm-hmm. Contrast that with, I've dabbled a bit in the angel investing VC world with sharks, dudes that are empowered with hundreds of millions or $1 billion to go spend, and they get to choose, just like the Shark Tank, what they're going to put their money into. And time again, I've heard from that world that it's far less about the idea and they buy the team. Mm-hmm. What's the team's history? Who is the team? How do they jive together? And they want to see that team working. In other words, you could have the most brilliant idea, MBA student, in your bed at night, but unless there is a purpose and vision surrounding that, the idea really isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's like, it's not only the vision of are you excited about where we're going, but I think for a lot of people, particularly with the new generation coming up, it's not necessarily about where are we going, meaning how much money are we going to make, but what impact does this have on the world, right? I think more and more people are getting a bigger piece of their motivation generated from impact more than just financial increase, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And one of my favorite listens the last year, you can find a podcast, YouTube, however you want to look him up, and many of you probably know him, but it's Peter Diamandis. He's buddies with Elon Musk and Tony Robbins. He's the founder of the SpaceX, X Prize. He's got a very extremely impressive resume, probably one of the smartest dudes on the planet right now. In fact, my favorite read, and I listen a lot, I don't read a lot, to be really honest with everybody, but my favorite of the past decade is his most recent book, The Future is Faster Than You Think. Check it out. It's one of the few books that I downloaded and I couldn't stop listening. I went through the whole thing in like 4 days. In fact, Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., I was leaving to the gym and this guy's cruising on an e-road bike and kind of swerves at my car. And I was half in a daze and I'm like, that's my dad. And I pulled over and he takes off his headphone. And he goes, I got a book you've got to listen to. I'm listening to this chapter on the future of education. And he said just a couple things. And I went, yeah, future's faster than you think. And he's like, you already knew about it?
Like, get with the times, Dad.
Yeah. So relating to what you just said, Peter is famous, not just in this book, but he's famous for saying this. He repeats it all the time. He coined the phrase moonshot. And now a lot of business people use that phrase. Hey, I'm shooting for a moonshot. And the definition of moonshot is $1 billion business. And he says the easiest way to start thinking about what the moonshot's going to be is define how you can help 1 billion people. If you can help 1 billion people, you've got a moonshot. The money's going to come. That's $1 a person. There's 1 million ways to slice that apple. We can let the accountants decide, but the visionaries need to decide, how do I help 1 billion people if you want to do a moonshot? Now, I'm not shooting for $1 billion business, to be really honest with you. I want to balance life. But I think there's a lot of merit in that. What's the focus? And that delineates down through the vision and the team and the shipbuilding and all that. Is it, we're going to close this many units and have this number of GCI in the real estate world? That's how we talk.
Yep.
We should probably shift gears and say, how many families are we going to help?
Yeah.
How are we going to get them into homes? What's a smoother process for the customer?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually really love the idea, and that's across all platforms, not just in business, but in fitness and family, all of that. I think there needs to be probably an individual vision for each one of those platforms that actually come together and piece together to a bigger vision of your personal life, right? And then breaking that down of not understanding of like, is that a destination, and how is it measured? But really understanding like when we're there, when we achieve this, what is the legacy that is being left behind it? In business, how many leaders have I built up? How many millionaires have I created within my organization? Within my family, are my kids out contributing to the world and chasing their passions? And have they learned to communicate and problem solve? In fitness and along my fitness journey, have I helped other people change their lifestyle, right? It's like beyond just what am I trying to accomplish, but it's like by me doing what I'm passionate about, what is the impact that if I turned around and looked behind me, what is the wake that I'm leaving behind me?
Yep. Yeah, it's a big deal. And for any, we mentioned this on the last time we talked for the whole enchilada. If there's newer people in this industry listening, or let's just say age demographic wise or younger, that's not so far ago for me. I can put myself in those shoes. And I remember hearing things like this early in my career. And although I liked it and may have gotten inspired, I also always had this little bit of chip, kind of like, yeah, well, okay, you've checked these boxes of achievement. And for me, money and closed units and GCIs first, but then later on, I'll decide, vision, legacy, and the wake I'm leaving behind me. Yeah. I think that's a mistake. If I could caution anybody early on, I think you can align both. And the sooner you do it, the less pain and frustration you're going to experience in your career. And if you're outside of real estate, this just jogged my memory. I was in Torrey, Utah, the latter part of last week and weekend at a good family friend's ranch and bed and breakfast they've built down there. I grew up with this family going on their family trips, going to Lake Powell. I've always really looked up to the dad, but he's a Green Beret. He's a man of few words. He is literally, for those that have seen Kevin Costner's Yellowstone, he is Jim Dutton. I mean, he's the real version of Jim Dutton down in Torrey. And when I say bed and breakfast, I'm not doing it justice. This is like legit ranch.
That's cool.
And I got to sit around the fire with him and stuff last week. But one thing that impressed me, it's not something he told me, it's just what I perceived. We're you and I are talking the world of real estate. That's what we know. And I think sometimes when you're listening to stuff like we're talking about, people say, yeah, but that's not my industry, or yeah, you can't just, not everybody on the team can make the same amount of money and have the same success. And how do you contrast that with this whole theme we all read that just do what you love and you'll have success and money and that'll come, Well, I love surfing behind my boat too, and I wish it made me a ton of money, right? People always say that. MBA students used to say that. Here's what I perceived at the ranch. There were two ranch hand dudes, probably just a little younger than us, but older guys, and they were working from freaking sun up to sundown. And after I saw this for 3 days, I went, they're not only working hard, they seem to like really enjoy it. And they were being really cool with my wife and my wife's friend, and they were taking our kids on ATV rides and stuff. They just seemed to be happy dudes. And then I noticed they were living on some trailers kind of right on the edge of the property. And I said, are you guys here full time? Like, there is no restaurants, no nightlife, no dating scene. They're both single dudes. They're like, oh yeah. So then I started going, what really is motivating them to be here? And is this the end all for them? I mean, they're getting a little like middle of their careers. And I learned one night around the fire with Gary, he didn't say anything about them specifically, but he was telling me how he's entitized the ranch. The assets are in the family trust, but the operating company, he gave 30% to key employees. And those two ranch hands each have 5%. It's not just the fact that he gave them 5%, so they're super motivated. It's the fact that this work, for some reason, aligns with their values and motivation, and they like it and they think it's fun, all that jazz, check. As they did a good job at it and were motivated and the ranch started having success, the owner went, I should further incentivize. So now they're 5% owners, check. And now in their free time, yeah, there's not girls in restaurants or country concerts very often.
Yeah.
But I found out they're huge hunters, and this location is a great spot for that. So what I'm describing, it's a win-win. The business owner gets super motivated, bought in people, win, and they're super bought in, motivated, and their work is their life and they love it.
I think that's such a great example for this scenario, right? Like a ranch hand, someone down there, like obviously that's something they're passionate about. But they could have just been the checkbox, the wood gatherers, whatever we call it. They're just doing the ranch work. But more than like, I'm guessing, I don't own a ranch, but I'm guessing ranch hands move around quite a bit, right? They stay for a while until there's a different group of people there, and that might cause them to leave, or someone recruits them away. But I bet there's a lot of mix. But I love the idea that this ranch owner had the foresight to say, okay, well, you might be here because of you love doing these things. You secondly might be here because you're excited about me and my leadership and what we do on the ranch. And third, I know that for me to keep you long term is I got to create opportunity of where we're going. And do you like the version of you see in the future there? Yeah. Right. And so I think that's such a beautiful analogy of this. And I would almost say, just to kind of start wrapping up our discussion there, is if we looked at this for each of us individually, whether it's from a business or personal side, I ask myself the question, hey, me personally, not that I have communicated, but do I have clear enough vision of where each of my companies are going, or a clear enough vision of what I'm trying to accomplish on a physical level, or whatever that looks like? Because I can't articulate it and inspire people if I don't have clarity.
Yep.
Go ahead.
You nailed it. That's a key factor I've struggled with. Call it mid-career crisis, or bouncing around, or call it chasing new opportunities, or going down rabbit holes, however you phrase it. At the same time, although I've struggled with it, I think you also have to come to peace with the fact that life's journey is exploring these things. I'm not sure that there's a company in history that nailed a mission statement, a purpose statement, a vision statement, in year one and stuck with it with a legacy of 30, 40, 50-year company. I'm sure Apple's changed theirs and Amazon,
Agreed.
all the rest, right? And so I think it's okay for the vision to change. And, if you've built the great ship and everyone's on it and now they're motivated by the sea, there's a lot of destinations you can go, but it's having that culture.
I love that you say that. In fact, I think if we actually slowed down and researched it a little bit, I think we'd pick the most notable, successful companies. And actually, if we tracked it backwards, we'd see them shift multiple times. Mm-hmm. And last weekend, my wife and I were sailing up in the Puget Sound, which we love sailing. But one of the coolest things about it, particularly when you take out the motor and you're purely operating under wind power, it's you have a destination and a plan when you go out there, but you don't know what the wind is going to do. And when it shifts, and it's you trim the sails based on the circumstances. But if I sat on shore forever and said, well, I have to wait for the perfect wind, the perfect time of the water coming in and out, whatever that looks like, then you never move and you stay stagnant. And so I love this that you brought this up is it's not about setting a vision in stone, but it's about giving enough clarity to let's create momentum.
Yeah. And I think we're all drawn to those people that can do that, and they might be scatterbrained or shifty, but they're positive, engaged. They know where they want to end up and keep expressing that vision. As you said with the Jack Welch story, even when the leader's not there, it's talked about around the water cooler.
Yeah.
So I think, and maybe I'm teaching myself as we talk, but I think that's kind of the boat you want to be on. And, I think in this, we mentioned this on the last podcast, in this hippie energy, spiritual sort of way, I think if you're struggling, for listeners like I did with defining that, you got to step back and go, oh, it's okay to continue to explore. That's part of life's journey. Yep. And number two, for me, if you're type A, if you're red, and you're always in your head, you're always in your mental body, and you're just trying to figure out what that is, I challenge you to try to feel, listen, tap into emotion, take a freaking break, go on vacation, go sail in the Puget Sound. And those things will become more clear to you. Yeah. You actually need to turn the mind off a little bit and feel what direction you should be going.
Yeah. No, and I think this is where the importance of a great leader shows up, right? Because if I get a bunch of people on board and excited about a destination, but I'm not a great leader, when it comes time for me to tell them, hey, we need to change direction a little bit, they're actually going to be frustrated with me because they're like, you said this is where we're going. This is how we are going to get there. But if my leadership level is high with them and I show up and say, hey guys, we made it to here. And because of XYZ, we got to shift. If my leadership is on a high enough level with them, it'll be like, okay, what do we need to do? Yep. Instead of it actually push you backwards if that leadership piece isn't there, right?
Yeah, good call. That's a good intricacy. Well, man, this is podcast number 2, so you need to be mailing me a whole enchilada shirt.
Yeah, buddy, I was waiting for you to notice it. I got them for you. And as we start getting some more comments from our people, I want to make a way for our listenership to get some of the swag we got coming in between the hats and the shirts. So I'll get you your shirts this week so you can start wearing the swag, and we'll spread the love.
I'm in.
Okay, awesome. So I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. If you had to summarize kind of your takeaways and action items from this conversation, Jake, what are you thinking?
I am the one book I'm listening to right now, and I'm not flying through it like I did Peter Diamanda's book that I mentioned, but it's still a good listen. One of my closest friends, Dan Holverson, told me it's his number one go-to. He's listened to it 3 or 4 times. Read is called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And I'm 4 chapters in, but a constant theme is she's alluding to perhaps the hardest part in everything we just discussed. Sounds crazy simple, but it's the hardest part, is actually truly defining what you want. What is that vision? What do you want? The purpose and all that can come. And this may be multiple wants. The way my mind thinks is compartmentalized. What do I want in health? What do I want in family? What do I want in my business? But Marcus, I've never sat down and really defined that. Have I done goal setting? Yeah. But putting this spin on it and starting with a deeper kind of purpose in mind and defining that. So that's my takeaway. I need to do that. This helped me. This reminded me that I've got to do that for myself. And there's, as we mentioned, it's okay to sail to different islands or to shift. I need to define it for now and probably relook at it on an annual basis.
Yeah, it actually makes me feel better that was your takeaway from this, because as I looked at this and kind of compartmentalize and say, okay, there's vision, there's leadership, there's team players. Where do I need to start? I came to the same conclusion of like, okay, my first question I asked myself is, have I articulated the vision clear enough to my people inside of each one of my organizations? And then it was like, oh, wait a second. Do I need to slow down and get really, really clear on that vision? And there's some fear around that too, because if your top people that you count on every single day, when you articulate that vision, if they're like, whoa, that's not where I want to go, you run the risk of losing that person.
Yeah.
But you're doing them a disservice and you a disservice if you're not willing to have that crucial conversation. Yep. So I came to the same conclusion of like, okay, let's slow down. Let's get clarity on what is the vision, what is the destination. Step 2 for me is going to be evaluating my leadership to that vision. Am I the leader to get us there?
Yeah.
And then it's moving into, do I have the ideal team players around me? And using the ideal team player, I don't know if you've read that book, but the thing he identifies, the ideal team player are the people on my team humble, hungry, and smart.
Yeah.
If every single one of them are those 3 things, then I got the right team around me. If I commit and really know that I'm the leader to get us there, I know that they'll lean into me. Number 3 is, are we all excited about the destination? And I think that was my kind of the wrap up on those 3. That quote for me is like, okay, I got some work to do here on leadership and vision.
Yeah, dude, that's killer. Now that you outlined those 3, one of my best friends, Josh Metal, those listening should look him up. Super successful lender in his own right. #1 originator of doctors and physicians in the United States. Also my partner in some commercial assets we own. He subscribes to that same book or wherever you read it religiously, because I've heard him say it many times. And he lives by that when hiring and recruiting and interviewing.
Awesome. Sounds like we need to get him on and have a conversation with him.
Let's do it. He'll do it.
Okay, awesome.
I'm committing him right here without even asking. He'll do it.
Good. Well, it's a done deal. He has no choice now. Okay, awesome. As always, Jake, I love our conversations. It's fun when I agree with you. I like these raw conversations, and I'm hoping our listeners are picking up that I'm learning as we're talking here, as I'm listening to you. And sometimes even when I'm making a statement, it's almost a statement of aha for myself through this journey. So I just sure appreciate your insight and thought around it. And then let's do this again in the next week or so and keep having some fun doing this.
Me too, brother. Sounds great.
All right, guys. Hey, everyone, thanks for listening. Make sure to, after this, take 2-3 minutes, think about what is the next action item for you to go implement and grow your leadership, grow your vision, identify those talented people in your world, and don't forget, go live life on your terms.